How will it all tie together, and will it all tie together as well? What if the Watcher stops watching and gets involved? I'm Al, this is the Geek In Review, and this is going to be my review of the final episode of Marvel's What If, and it will contain spoilers if you haven't seen the episode, so this is your only warning. In the last episode, it was going to be very interesting to see what was going to happen with all these characters that we've seen and how they were going to overcome the threat of the sort of multiverse Ultron from the last episode. I'm just going to say this at the top. I have to say this is probably, I think, the most boring and predictable episode of this series, and I'll get to that in a second. But let's look at the episode first of all. So we see the Watcher picking up from last week, where he's confronted the Supreme Strange and asked for his help in defeating Ultron. And as most people theorise, the last episode is a sort of big team up of the characters that we've seen over the season so far. So we see Captain Carter, and this time in her reality she's in the sort of Winter Soldier period, and it's that opening in the film where they have to get onto the boat. And what this sort of says is, although she arrived differently in the future to how Steve Rogers got there in the original reality, Peggy seems to have filled his role directly. So events in this reality have pretty much played out exactly the same way that they did in the main MCU. But for one thing, and I'll get to that at the end of the video, we also see him go back and recruit what we think is going to be Peter Quill. And let's be honest, did you even remember that Peter Quill was in this show? Because I totally forgot, and it was glad to see him back. But he doesn't recruit Peter Quill, he does recruit Star-Lord, but it's a Star-Lord that we know from the What If universe, so it's T'Challa, who's actually jumped in to save Peter from his dad, Ego. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this, you get the idea, and the Watcher has recruited all the characters from all the episodes in the series to team up to fight Ultron. And I have to say that they call themselves the Guardians of the Multiverse, and although this is a joke, it is a big hint at the Illuminati, which is an organisation in the Marvel Comics. And if the rumours are to be believed, they're going to play a significant role in the MCU going forward from Doctor Strange 2 in the Multiverse of Madness. There's been a lot of rumours about that in the last few weeks. They are just rumours, but a lot of the hints that they're dropping in this episode does seem to indicate that's the way that they're going to go. But with the team assembled, the Watcher lays down the stakes that it's not just their world that's at stake, that all of reality is at stake because of Ultron. The sort of way that he's ascended to this higher plane, and the fact that he has the Infinity Stones as well. But while it's nice to see a Marvel team up, and I've said it before, Marvel do team ups better than anyone else, this isn't the group that I would pick to face off against a multiverse threat. Apart from Thor and a couple of others, they're all sort of generally quite underpowered. So it does feel to me like it was a little bit shoehorned in, but it was to be expected. After all, this is a limited series, and they did say that it wasn't going to tie into the main MCU. A lot of people, including myself, had theories that it might, and I still think we will probably get Easter eggs carried over from this show picking up in the films or the TV shows, but as always, we're going to have to wait and see. Now, a lot of this episode, like most of the season, feels familiar. It's just a retelling of events from a different point of view. And in this one, it's mostly the sort of plans and the fight sequences from all the different Marvel films, namely Infinity War and Endgame. But there's nods to pretty much every huge Marvel fight, and they cut between it in scene to scene really quickly. And I know the way I'm describing it, it doesn't sound great, but it actually works really well. I do think there was a lot of problems with this episode, but it was more in the storytelling, not in the visuals. Everything visually here worked, and they've got those great hero moments, like the one they had in the last episode when Hawkeye jumps into the sort of pit of Ultrons. There's a few in here that stand out. I'm not going to go into too much specifics, but I really enjoyed it, and although the visuals are great, they still haven't really nailed how to do the female faces. None of the female characters over this season have really looked like the actresses. I mean, the Rachel McAdams one in Doctor Strange looked nothing like her. Darcy and Thor looked absolutely, and Jane even looked nothing like those actresses either. So they do need to try harder for this going forward, I think, because the male characters are pretty much spot on. But as I said, it does feel like this has all sort of been crammed in together in one sort of big sandwich. And one of the issues that I did have is because these characters have never met each other, even in their own realities, they haven't met that version of that character, but especially because they haven't met each other because of the multiverse, there's no real connection or bond between them that we've had in the other Marvel team-ups. Because with the first Avengers, I wasn't sure how they were going to create the bond in the team, and Joss Whedon, to his credit, done that really well and set up the template. And when they do team up against Ultron, although, as I mentioned, there's a lot of nods to the previous big Marvel fight sequences, there was no real sense of excitement for me here in terms of the dynamic of the characters and how they were interacting. It was all just how about they were going to beat Ultron, which, because you've already seen these fight sequences already or an earlier version of them, it sort of eliminated quite a lot of the excitement for me. Again, visually it looked great, but they could have done a lot more with what they had, especially given the fact that this is an animated as opposed to a live action show. But I did like the bit where Doctor Strange made multiple Thor's hammers like you'd seen him do before. I think it was in Infinity War with butterflies or something like that. That was really good and a really clever nod back. And they do bring everything back in this episode. They tie everything up perfectly. One of the great sort of defences that Strange uses is he opens a portal, and it's from the zombie episode, and all the Marvel zombies pour out on top of Ultron, and there's just thousands of them, and it never occurred to me that they were going to bring the zombies back. I did think briefly that they might bring back zombie Thanos, but after we seen Ultron cut him in half last week, I sort of forgot about that notion and put it straight out of my head. But the big takeaway for this is bringing back the zombie Wanda or Scarlet Witch, because again, going to Doctor Strange 2 rumours, she is apparently going to play the villain, and there's quite a few hints in this episode setting this up as well. At one point during the big fight, Strange sort of transforms himself into a tentacle style monster similar to the one that Peggy was fighting at the end of episode 1. She actually seems to recognise it, and a lot of people thought this was going to be Shuma Gorath and that Shuma was going to be the villain in Doctor Strange 2. But the recent rumours and supposed leaks that are coming out are setting up Wanda. So maybe Supreme Strange is working under Wanda, or some other version of Supreme Strange is working for Wanda if she's going to be the big bad in the next Doctor Strange. But as always, we are going to have to wait. Get a bit more information on how the Infinity Stones work in the Marvel Universe. I've mentioned this in my Loki video before, but in the comics, the Infinity Stones only work in your dimension. So if you travel to another dimension, the Infinity Stones are essentially useless. Now, given the fact that we've seen the stones sitting about in a drawer in one of the Loki episodes, everyone thought that that was going to be the case for the MCU. But it appears that the stones are going to work across multiverses, not only in their native realities, and it seems that that's going to be one of the things that are going to want to keep in continuity for the Infinity Stones, at least in the animated universe. But I don't think we're done with the Infinity Stones in the live action Marvel universe either. Now, after they defeat Ultron, again we get a lot of beats back to original stories. Killmonger wants to use the stones similar to the way that he wanted to use the Wakanda technology in the first Black Panther film to make changes that he sees are going to be fit to improve the world and the multiverse at large. You can see why this would be a big debate, because these characters now have access to this power. Doctor Strange manages to imprison the Infinity Stones and Killmonger in this sort of bubble reality, and he agrees to watch over it exactly the same way that the Watcher watches over the multiverse. Now again, going back to rumours that we are going to see Supreme Strange pop up in live action MCU, I just wonder if they are going to tie it into this animated show, because I thought there'd be a lot more set up for potential MCU properties, or even more sort of concrete hints at what's going to happen with the multiverse going forward. But they seem to want to keep a bit of detachment between the live action and the animated show, which I guess makes sense, because you can't expect everyone to watch all these shows and watch the 5 or 6 Marvel films that are going to start coming out again every year, now the release schedule is at least back on at the moment. To talk about all the Marvel shows that we've had this year, they have gotten a bit of flack for letting down fan theory expectations. And by that, I mean mainly Mephisto. I mean, I think we've said that he's going to pop up in every show, including this one, and we've not got him so far. And while I understand that they can't pander to fans all the time, and they certainly can't do it in a live action one, I think there was a bit more scope to do things and be a bit more adventurous with the Marvel properties that they haven't taken advantage of. But What If is getting a second season, so hopefully they are going to take a few more risks. And I should point out as well that there is an end credit scene, and this picks up from the Winter Soldier storyline in the Captain Carter universe, where after she's landed on the ship and had a fight, she finds out that, shock horror, Steve Rogers is on the ship with the Hydra Buster armour. Now, this means a lot of things, or this could mean a lot of things. The first thing that popped into my head was, well, is Steve now Bucky, the sort of Winter Soldier? The second thing that occurred to me was clearly they're going to carry this story arc over into the second season. And the third thing that occurred to me, again going back to the Doctor Strange rumours, is that Captain Carter is rumoured to be part of the Illuminati in the MCU when they're going to launch that. So the fact that they're showing this character in a post-credit scene means that they do want to continue her story, at least in animated form, but I'm willing to put more than a bit of money on the fact that she might pop up in the live-action MCU. Now, although this wasn't my favourite episode of What If, I do think it was very boring and predictable. And to be honest, if you look online or you look at any reviews or any prediction what's going to happen, most people nailed it, which is a little bit disappointing. But overall, I did really enjoy this season. But what did you think of this episode and the season as a whole? What was your favourite episode of What If? I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below, or you can reach me on Twitter at TheGeeksReviews. If you've made it this far, please leave a like on the video, and if you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the channel because I am producing more videos more often now. My name's Al, thanks for watching.